Oh, man. This could have been so good. All right, we're 6 episodes in, and I just want to make myself very clear. I did not like the first 4 episodes at all. The reason I didn't like them is because I thought they were boring. The characters are not interesting. The story is weird, and it's just uneventful. And then episode 5 came around and completely shifted the tone, the scope, and the level of intensity that we were looking for when the show was pitched to us as this dark underbelly Sith infiltrating the Jedi without them ever noticing. And I was interested to see if episode 6 was going to pick up where that left off. And while the episode itself, again, was fine, just like the first 4, it's made me realize that this show has done a disservice to the people watching it because I just do not care about any of the characters. And it makes me think back to episode 5 when we watched Yord and Jeki die. I didn't care. I mean, they were cool deaths. The 3 sabers going through Jeki, the Yord neck snap. I was like, whoa, that was crazy. Star Wars, wow. But I wasn't like emotionally impacted like Saul was when he screamed for Jeki's death. I just didn't care. And that's kind of the key to all this, and we're going to get into why I think The Acolyte could have been great, and then why ultimately it's failed, and how Lucasfilm has failed yet again in terms of making a TV show. And I hate poo-pooing on all this stuff because I'm a pretty positive person, but at a certain point, you got to start calling out people who aren't getting the job done, and they do not know how to make a proper TV show. It's really frustrating because when I watch this show, it's got a new, fresh story, the tale of a Sith 100 years ago coming out of the woodworks to seduce people to the dark side, to infiltrate the Jedi Order without people realizing it. I mean, yes, we saw Palpatine working with his apprentice, whether that was Dooku or Maul in the prequels, but it was not to this extent where they had no idea that anything was going on. And the choreography in this show, the fight scenes in episode 5 were prequel level amazing. They were the best fight scenes since Phantom Menace. They had some cool, interesting plot devices like the armor that disables, lightsabers. All that stuff is very interesting. And the actors went to work learning this fight choreography in such a special way. They made me go, oh my God, there is something special here. And there is a moment where Mandy Jacinto is fighting Daphne Keane, and she holds up Kalnaka's lightsaber, and then the other one ignites from behind, and she looks down at it and looks up at him, and the Star Wars music goes, dun, dun, dun. And I'm like, whoa, that was it right there. Whatever you just did right in that moment, that is Star Wars. George Lucas' sense of wonder, sense of hope in the face of absolute evil and darkness, the light triumphs. Whatever that was right there, I go back and watch that moment so much because I'm like, oh, not even the sequel trilogy captured the essence of George Lucas as you did right in that moment. And that shows me the writers and the creators of this show, they had it. It was there. Episode 5 showed us what Star Wars could be, and some of the direction in that episode is great, and the musical score is great. But it makes me realize something about the show that's just not good enough. The main characters, May and Osha. Why? Why are they in the show? Why do they matter to me? Why do they matter to the plot? May and Osha flip-flop motivations and ideologies on a dime without giving a shit about the people around them, about the plot, about cohesive writing. It's just mind-numbing how useless and boring these two characters are to the show. Nothing to do with Amanda Stenberg. She's a wonderful actor, and she's doing everything she can. She's given what she's given. But they are just meaningless. I'm not rooting for one or against the other. They just run around and get knocked out and then wake up to characters being like, I need to tell you something. And that's all they do. And now episode 7 is going to be a flashback to what really happened with the fire. And I just couldn't care less. And it makes me think back to Obi-Wan. That show should have been a movie between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Had too much going on. The Leia stuff, get it out of there. The Reva stuff, get it out of there. The only difference between The Acolyte and Obi-Wan Kenobi is that I would like to see the Reva stuff or the Leia stuff in a separate show. That stuff was actually pretty interesting to me. A Padawan Jedi who was almost killed by Vader in Order 66, who then learns the ways of the dark side to get close to Vader to kill him, is an interesting story that's not supposed to be in an Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker-led TV show. And Lucasfilm seems to be obsessed with taking great ideas, the origin and infiltration of the Sith 100 years before Phantom Menace, or the rematch of the century between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and adding all this stuff to it to stretch out the runtimes of TV shows. And if you're going to do that, you better at least go out of your way to make them relatable and easy to root for and interesting characters and plot points. And instead, they just add stuff like the twins in The Acolyte, or Reva in the Obi-Wan series, or those 4 random Boba Fett episodes in season 2.5 of The Mandalorian. Just kidding. And Boba Fett was not very good, but those 2 Mando episodes that were randomly in there for no reason were just unbelievable. Even speaking of Mando, like that series has been consistently about one thing, but there are random like side quest filler missions, like the episode with the frogs and the spiders, or the episode where he has to go get the egg for the Jawas, that just mean nothing. And I think that's the frustrating thing with The Acolyte and with Star Wars TV in general, is that when you have moments in episode 5 and some in 6, when you see the series finale of Obi-Wan Kenobi, you realize that you were on the right track. You had it. You had it. But you screwed it up because you added too much to the soup at the very end. And unfortunately, the characters in the show, while interesting, are not important to the story that we're telling. And Manny Jacinto, as this random Sith guy, I still don't know. I'm not convinced that he's a Sith. He is an inspired choice to be a Sith. He's mostly a comedic actor from what people tell me. He's in The Good Place. The problem is his character is going to ultimately go nowhere because he's either going to die in these last 2 episodes or he's going to live, and then what? Where does he go? He's not in any of the other Star Wars stuff we've ever seen. This show is definitely not getting a season 2. So whatever cool and interesting stuff they've done with this new Sith character, it's completely irrelevant and pointless. Now, what I will say about this show, and what I find most interesting about the people who are really hating on this show, and by the way, if you don't like the show, if you hate the show, you're just as valid and warranted as people who love the show or like the show. I think it's just fine, and the worst thing you can be is fine. I'd rather something be really bad because at least it would be enjoyable to watch. But if you're saying, it's bad because it's diverse or because it's gay, you're a moron and get out of here. The interesting thing about the people who uber hate this show is that I feel like they love the prequels. And what is clouding them for some reason is that they don't realize that this is the most prequel level thing to exist since the prequels. I mean, think about it. The weird, stilted George Lucas acting and dialogue choices are ripped right out of the prequels. It's got a young adult kind of vibe. And if you tell me the prequels aren't young adult, go rewatch everything involving Anakin and Padme and tell me that's not young adult to the max Twilight level cringe. It has great action set pieces and choreography, and people have come out of the woodworks to absolutely rip it a new asshole and claim that it's breaking canon and lore, just as though the prequels didn't do the same thing. It didn't rip canon to shreds, but it gave characters some really stupid choices, like Yoda in particular. He loses to Darth Sidious and then just falls out of a hole and goes, to exile I must go. Why? Why, Yoda? Go back up and continue fighting. Or when they're like, oh, we must hide Luke. Where should we hide him? To Tatooine with his family. Oh, that's a good place to hide Luke Skywalker. The one place that Anakin might go revisit every now and again. Good thinking. And we'll give Leia a rich life and we'll give Luke a poor life. It's moments like that in the prequels that do not make any sense in terms of where we lead things off. And George Lucas was like, oh, we just got to get them there. Well, just say I have to go to exile because I lost the fight. And if the prequels came out today, in the age of social media, and this is a person who likes a lot of the prequels and dislikes a lot of the prequels in terms of the aspects of the movies. I love them and I hate them at the same time. If they came out today, in the age of Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, oh my God, the vitriol, the hate that these actors would be getting, I could not imagine how bad it would be for Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman and George Lucas and Ewan McGregor and Sam Jackson if the prequels came out today. It is exactly what Leslye Headland and all the actors and writers of The Acolyte are going through. Not to say that a lot of the stuff people are saying isn't warranted. I don't think The Acolyte's very good. I don't think the prequels are very good. I can find enjoyment in the prequels because they're not boring. They are action-packed and they are chaotic. The difference is The Acolyte is just, It's just nothing. Just rolls right off my back. But I feel like The Acolyte is the modern day version of the prequels. When people are like, oh, it's The Last Jedi, I'm sorry. But the sequel trilogy looks like Citizen Kane compared to some of the stuff in The Acolyte. Because again, at least the sequel trilogy isn't boring. At least it took some chances. At least it has characters that you can root for. That's the difference between The Acolyte and the sequel trilogy. People come out of the sequel trilogy and go, the story went nowhere, but I like Rey. I think Finn's cool, and Poe's kind of cool. Like, the characters at least give you something to hold on to in the sequel trilogy. And I think the prequels getting a lot of hate back in the day, even though social media didn't exist. Now people have since come around on them, and I get it. And the same thing will happen to the sequel trilogy. The kids who grew up on the prequels now have access to the internet. The same thing's going to happen with the sequels. The kids that grew up with those movies are going to one day have Twitter accounts, if Twitter or the internet is still around in the year 2035, and defend the sequels all the live long day. And it's going to be one big happy family. But The Acolyte, to me, is not the modern day Last Jedi. It's the modern day prequel. So I don't know. There's 2 episodes to go. I don't foresee these last 2 episodes changing my mind. And again, I stand by what I've been saying for a while to people that I know and trust. I wouldn't be watching the show if it wasn't Star Wars. But the discourse is so crazy that I just want to see if the show is going to do anything to really rip the fans apart. Create some civil war between Star Wars fans. I mean, God, just, guys, you need to go outside. It's a bad show, and Skeleton Crew will come out, and it'll be good or it'll be bad. And then the movies will come out, and they'll be good or they'll be bad. Hopefully they'll be good, and just don't be boring. But The Acolyte, man, it could have been great. It could have been great. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Drop likes, drop comments, and please be sure to subscribe. It is free. I throw in the charge to you. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.